Thank you so much, Hannah and Krista, for inviting me to present today. I'm really excited to be doing this with Western Washington University because I have the pleasure of working with a student at Western Washington as part of the Virtual Student Federal Service Program. So Hannah McNulty is also here and will talk a little bit about her experience applying for and in the virtual internship a little later on. So Hannah, thank you so much for joining. I have a presentation that I will share and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions and answers. So please do put your comments or questions in the chat as they occur to you or save them for after the presentation. Okay, so let me make sure you all can see that. Hopefully you can. I'll go ahead and get started. So I always like to start my presentations with a brief reminder of what the State Department is. We are a federal agency we're part of the executive branch. We're actually the oldest cabinet agency. And we help formulate foreign policy in Washington, D.C., and then we represent that foreign policy and advance U.S. interests around the world at our over 270 different U.S. embassies and consulates. We hire folks into a few different types of career tracks. Principally for American citizens, that is the civil service or the foreign service. And these are two halves of the whole in the State Department. The civil service is your more traditional federal employment. It is our home-based team, primarily working out of our headquarters in Washington, D.C. The foreign service is our forward deployed team, working out of our embassies and consulates, rotating every couple of years. So for folks interested in working for the State Department, the first thing I always say is you have to figure out which of those two career tracks are you interested in, home basing in DC or moving around a bit. And for some people, the home basing is more appealing, and for some people, the moving every couple of years is more appealing. There are policy, program, and operation jobs in both the civil service and the foreign service. I'm going to focus mostly today on the foreign service. I will mention a little bit about the civil service when I get to student programs, but all of our civil service jobs are posted on usajobs.gov. You can do a search for those and apply directly through usajobs.gov. I will note that the largest majority of folks that actually work for the State Department are citizens of other countries that we hire locally to work with us at all of our embassies and consulates. But today I'm going to focus on opportunities for US citizens. I am a Foreign Service generalist or officer. I've been in the Foreign Service now for over 24 years. I first became interested in the Foreign Service when I was studying abroad. When I was in college, I studied abroad in Cameroon. And I had the opportunity to go to the U.S. Embassy in Yaoundé and to meet with folks, and it piqued my interest. I really enjoyed being abroad, talking about the United States, and representing the U.S. in my small student way. And so when I came back from my study abroad program, I looked into what opportunities there were to do that for a living. I have served in a variety of different places and in a variety of different capacities, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm also married to a fellow Foreign Service officer, and we have 3 kids. The Foreign Service is more than just a career, it is a life that your whole family does get involved in. So I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. As I said, when I came back from studying abroad, I talked to a professor and I said, how do I represent the United States as a career? How does one work in this field? And he clued me into the Foreign Service. And when I found out about it, it really married my interests in international affairs and in public service. I really wanted to do something where I felt like I was contributing to my community, whether or not that was local, state, federal, international. And it's been a purposeful career. I have felt like the work that I'm doing is sometimes really, really hard, but it's always worth doing. It's a dynamic career because you're moving every 2 to 3 years and you're changing your assignments every 2 to 3 years. You're always challenged to do new things and to try new things and learn new things. You get a lot of training in this career. I've spent about 3.5 years total being a full-time student of languages. I've learned Nepali, Arabic, and Macedonian during my career. I've spent about a third of my career in DC and about 2/3 overseas, and that's pretty typical for a Foreign Service employee. There's no set formula, but you will find that generally the majority of your time is spent overseas, and about some of the time is in Washington, DC. Your first 2 assignments in the Foreign Service are what we call directed, meaning you have some input into it, but ultimately you have to go where we ask you to go based on what the needs are at the time and what we know you need to be able to demonstrate that you can be successful in the career. Because your first few years in the Foreign Service are a bit probationary, you have to earn what we call tenure. Let's talk a little bit about what jobs in the Foreign Service actually look like. So I said that I was a Foreign Service generalist or officer. We hire folks into 2 career categories in the Foreign Service, generalist and specialist. Generalists are hired for our general knowledge and for our professional and personal attributes and skills. And I'm going to talk about those attributes a little later on. We're hired into the Corps, but we choose a primary career track, and we have 5 tracks that we choose from. I'm a public diplomacy tracked officer. Public diplomacy is about explaining the United States to the public of another country, enhancing understanding of the United States, appreciation for who we are, what we're about, enhancing understanding and appreciation for our policies. You're doing policy advocacy in a more public way. You use a variety of different tools to engage the public. It might be education programs, exchange programs, media engagement, cultural programming. Public diplomacy officers are the program themselves a lot of the time, doing a lot of public speaking. Political and economic officers are what we call reporting officers. They are charged with tracking certain areas of interest for the United States, policy topics, talking to people that are working in that field, both to gather information, but also to impart what our opinion, the United States, is on those issues, and to try and influence and find areas of cooperation on those issues. They do analysis of those issues and they write reports back to Washington to inform the policymaking process. They also represent policy in a formal way to the government of the country you're in. Consular officers are the heart and soul of our organization. They are the first folks that were sent overseas by George Washington. And they are charged with facilitating legal travel to the United States for students, tourists, folks that are coming for temporary work, and people that are applying for immigration status. They also provide assistance to US citizens who are overseas, and that can be as simple as replacing a lost or stolen passport to helping an American who might be sick or in need in some way, helping Americans in a crisis. This past spring, consular officers around the world facilitated the largest evacuation of American citizens that we've ever done, over 100,000 folks from every country in the world. And management officers are the ones that make it all happen. There are global business managers overseeing every aspect of our global operation, from finances, HR, supply chain, our properties. They're negotiating the terms of our presence in any country, negotiating contracts, leases. They have a big job making sure that our organization and outfits can run. On the specialist side, we hire folks for their specialized skills and knowledge. We are also evaluating them on certain personal and professional attributes. And again, we'll get to that in just a minute. But as you can see, we have specialists in a wide array of fields. Our IT folks are responsible for all of our communication and data networks, both on our unclassified as well as our classified side. They're also responsible for looking at how we can better apply technology to what we're doing so that we can better do our work and advance US interests. On the administration side, we hire experts to focus specifically on different fields in our operation: HR, finance, the supply chain. We hire folks to be executive office managers to make sure that we're running efficiently and doing the best that we can. We hire engineers, both on our building operations side, as well as on our security side, to be looking at all of our facilities and how we can enhance our technical and physical security. Our diplomatic security special agents are a bit of a different position than all these others in that you actually don't have to have specialized knowledge in security or law enforcement to apply to be a DS special agent. They'll teach you all of that. But our DS special agents are law enforcement officers with responsibility for all the security programs for our people and personnel around the world. They're also responsible for security diplomacy, enhancing rule of law, accountability, transparency, and security forces around the world. On our healthcare side, we hire folks to make sure that our people and our families are well taken care of. We provide medical services at every embassy, and so we need medical professionals to make sure that that medical unit and our medical worldwide operations are running well. And then we hire folks that have specialized skills in English language teaching and public outreach to work with our public diplomacy sections on designing programs to engage the public. We have another opportunity that's not a career position, but a limited term appointment, and that's our Consular Fellow program. In this program, we're hiring specifically for 4 language skills: Portuguese, Mandarin, Spanish, and Arabic. And we're hiring folks that have some foundation in those languages to come on and work with us doing consular work. That's again facilitating legal travel to the US and assisting American citizens in countries where those languages are spoken. We have a higher demand for our consular services in those countries, and so we hire folks in this program to augment our ability to perform that work. You get all the full benefits of being in the Foreign Service. You get that overseas experience. A lot of folks like to do this program. Maybe they don't want to do the running around the world every 2 to 3 years for a whole career, but would like to try it out. And this program allows them to do that before they settle down to another position. It's also a great way to gain experience maybe before launching into a professional career in another field. A lot of people like to do this program to gain professional experience before applying to the Foreign Service, to the career positions. Some folks do this between undergrad and grad school. I know folks that have applied to law school who really like to do this program because a lot of it is about understanding and applying law. I said a couple times that when we hire for certain attributes. We call these the dimensions. And these are skills and attributes that we know people need to have to be successful in the Foreign Service. And they vary from cultural adaptability to communication to resourcefulness, innovation. We go into detail on our website about what we mean in each of these categories, because we want people to understand what we're looking for, because the bulk of our selection and evaluation process focuses on evaluating for these dimensions. That process of evaluation is a 3-phased process. For everyone, the initial phase after you've submitted your application is a kind of a check. Do you have that general knowledge if you're applying for the generalist position, or the specialized knowledge and skills? Once you've done that check, then your application moves on to the second phase where we do delve into those dimensions. And we do that in this second phase with a panel of people who are going to look at your application. And in particular, they're going to look at 6 personal narratives that you write in which you describe for us how you have those attributes, those dimensions that we're looking for, using examples from your life to illustrate that for us. The panel will score you against those 12 dimensions, those 12, 13 dimensions. And if you get a high enough score, then you'll be invited to an in-person assessment called the oral assessment. At this point, only applicants for the Consular Fellow Program have to take a language test. It's not required to take a language test to join the Foreign Service. During the oral assessment, you're going to be put through a number of different exercises, again, to try and elicit how you have those dimensions that we're looking for. If you score highly enough during the oral assessment, then you're given a conditional offer of employment that's contingent on you getting a medical and a security clearance, which we will undertake to do. Once that's done, your whole package gets one final review before you're put on our register of successful candidates. And it's from that register that we pull people to form orientation classes. And everyone joins the Foreign Service in an orientation class. This whole process is a little bit lengthy. It can take about 18 to 24 months to get through. It's also competitive, and so we do caution people not to be discouraged if you do not make it through on your first time. The majority of people who are in the Foreign Service currently have gone through this process more than once. A couple tips that you can think about in terms if you decide you do want to join the Foreign Service. Getting briefings like this is a help, but then delve into the information in more detail that's on our website. Know the requirements for the various positions, understand the process a little bit more. We have process maps, we have preparatory guides, we have practice tests if you're going to have to take a threshold test. Our mobile app, DOS Careers, has a test yourself section on it, which is great if you're thinking of applying to as a Foreign Service generalist. You can practice those quizzes and figure out where your strengths are and your weaknesses are so you can focus maybe your studies and your preparation. Learn a little bit about the Foreign Service because part of the process is understanding what you're getting into. There's some great books out there that we have links to on our website about the Foreign Service, about foreign affairs. We also have a couple of foreign policy classrooms that I definitely recommend. One that's run by our Global Public Affairs Bureau and one that's run by the National Museum of American Diplomacy. And they have a fantastic website with a great deal of information and resources if you are thinking about a career in the field. And I definitely encourage you to work on your writing, practice your writing. Writing is a big, important thing for us, and we evaluate that at each stage of the selection process. And then challenge yourself. You know, those 13 dimensions, I always say to people, you have to do your own self-assessment. Do you have good evidence to show how you're strong in all 13 of those dimensions? If not, look for opportunities in which you can challenge yourself to grow in those new ways, gain that experience, and build up your repertoire. You may not be ready to apply for a job, and that's completely fine. You may be more focused on student opportunities, and we have plenty of those. So I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about the various opportunities that we do have. But I'm going to pause at the virtual student federal service to let Hannah speak a little bit. But before I move on, I did say I was going to come back to the civil service when I talked about student opportunities. And I do want to flag 2 opportunities that do create a pathway into the civil service, which can be very hard to apply for if you don't have federal hiring privileges. And the way you get those is either you're already a federal employee, veterans have those, returned Peace Corps volunteers, people who do AmeriCorps, City Year, Teach for America, some of our Fulbright programs, and some of our language, critical language and Boren Scholarship also provide you with those opportunities. If you do pursue a program that does have that federal hiring privilege for a period of time, don't waste that. It's a golden ticket, and I really encourage you to pay attention to that. But there are a couple student opportunities that you can pursue if you're looking at the civil service, and that is the Pathways program and the Presidential Management Fellowship. The Pathways program, or particularly a Pathways Recent Graduate Fellow program, is a 1 to 2 year internship. It's paid, it's a full-time job that can lead into a full-time position in the civil service. The Presidential Management Fellowship is a 2-year fellowship that you would do after completing an advanced degree. And that also leads to a permanent position in the civil service. So those are really important things to think about if you are interested in the civil service. But to focus more on back to this sort of foreign service and the State Department specifically, our biggest program is our unpaid internship. It's a 10-week full-time internship. We run it 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall. We have literally hundreds of positions every season. We do accept applications for this quite far in advance because we have to get you a security clearance. So for example, applications for this summer's internships were accepted last September. Those assignments have already been made. Students are in the process of getting their security clearances now. We also have another full-time internship program, which is paid. It's a 2-summer commitment, and it is needs-based and merit-based. The application is a bit more complicated than our unpaid internship, and the eligibility requirements, the GPA is higher. It's a great program, and again, the application for this is also very far in advance. It actually precedes the application for the unpaid student internship, so you do have to plan ahead for this one. And then we have our virtual student federal service. And Hannah, would you like to contribute your thoughts on this and talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I found out about the virtual student federal service from an email from the political science department. Basically, they sent out an email sort of like explaining what the program was with a link to a list of projects. I don't know the exact time frame of when those projects are like released, but basically projects are put out. You can research up to 3 projects that you're interested in. And then in July on the 1st, the application opens and it's open for the entire month. I knew that I was really interested in this program because I liked that I got to apply to 3 different projects and I could focus on 3 different areas that I was interested in. When I was working on my application, I made sure to focus on how the skills that I had learned at Western would be beneficial to whatever project that I was applying to, and I really tailored my statement. I also want to say it's not a super long statement. I think it's only like 500 words or something like that. And then I heard back in mid-August for an interview, and then about a week later, I was accepted to be one of the virtual student federal service interns for the Diplomat in Residence for the Northwest. And then from about September through May, I've just been working on a variety of different projects, including like data entry, helping with info sessions, just a wide variety of stuff. And all the projects differ, but they're all really great learning experiences and a really good opportunity to help you grow your skills.
Great. Thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so the projects, this is actually a program that the entire federal government participates in. The State Department started it, so we host it, but everybody contributes. So you can find really a wide variety of projects, and they start to get posted, I think, as early as May even. But as Hannah said, you do apply in July. It's a part-time internship, unpaid, that you do throughout the academic year. And sometimes folks can get academic credit for it as well. We do have a couple of fellowships that I wanted to share with you as well. The Pickering and the Wrangell fellowships were created at this point to try and help encourage folks from underrepresented communities to join the Foreign Service. They support a two-year graduate school program with funding for the graduate school studies, as well as paid internships during the summer, mentorship and coaching, and then a path into the Foreign Service. Pickering and Rangel Fellows still have to pass the Foreign Service Officer Test and the oral assessment. So they're still sort of going through the process, but they have that experience and that support to be successful in the process. There is a 5-year service commitment, but we certainly hope fellows will stay for the whole program. You apply the September before you want to, the year before you want to go to grad school. So the selection happens pretty fast, either by late November, early December at the latest, so that you have that fellowship in hand when you're applying to grad school. I will say also grad schools track who gets these fellowships, and so I know finalists for the fellowship start hearing from grad schools about applying while they're still in the application process. So it is a prestigious program, but it's a great program. Similarly, we have a fellowship called the Foreign Affairs IT Fellowship, and this leads into an opportunity in the Foreign Service as an information management specialist. The nice thing about the Foreign Affairs IT Fellowship is that it actually can be applied to either undergrad or grad school. So folks that are freshmen, sophomores can look ahead, apply no later than the beginning of sophomore year, and have this be applied to support your junior and senior year, with you being set up to have a job right at graduation. It does include 2 paid summer internships, one in DC and one overseas, as well as that mentorship and coaching. So this is also a great program to think about. Generally, the applications have been due early February of each year. They open up in September. And then I do want to flag the programs that we support that are study abroad and foreign language programs. The Critical Language Scholarship, the Bourne Scholarship, these are great opportunities to do language and cultural studies. The Gilman Scholarship funds study abroad. If you get one of our internships, the unpaid ones, and you're assigned abroad at an embassy or consulate, you can apply for the Gilman Scholarship to help fund that unpaid internship. And then, of course, the Fulbright program, our flagship program that I definitely want to encourage you to take a look at. And then there's a couple of tips if you're thinking about any of our student opportunities. There are a few things that you can do in advance. So generally, while the virtual student program the application does stay open for a whole month. With most of our other internships and fellowships, the application period is quite a bit shorter. So I always recommend to people to do a lot of research in advance about what the requirements are. Start making sure that you're pulling together all the materials that you're going to need, if you're going to need transcripts or references. And try and set yourself up so that all that kind of administrative part is done before the application opens. So for many of our programs, the application actually happens through usajobs.gov. So create that account in advance, build your resume in advance, so it's all ready to go. And as Hannah talked about, make sure your statement is well written, is thoughtful and targeted. Hannah was exactly right. Thinking about what skills do you have that you could bring to any project on which you might be working. And they don't have to be foreign affairs or foreign policy related. But what are some of the transferable skills you have? Are you good at writing? Are you good at organizing events? Are you good at social media? Try and market those. And then finally, before we turn it over to Q&A, just say that this is a lot of information. There's a lot of opportunities. This is kind of just an introduction. And I would be happy to talk with folks. Again, if you're interested and you have questions about the process or the positions, I hold office hours, and you can sign up for a one-on-one consultation. You can also email me. At some point, we'll get back to the days when I come in person to career fairs, but until then, I do also participate in virtual career fairs, and always happy to talk with potential candidates. So why don't I go ahead and stop the presentation and see what questions folks have.
So you said that like for when you're abroad, part of one of the jobs is like promoting the United States and like promoting our policies. Like, how much does that change depending on like administration changes or legislative changes? Like, how influenced is like that by who's heading the executive branch?
Mhm. Yeah, we represent the policies of the United States as they develop, and the executive branch is where foreign policy is made. So sometimes there are changes from administration to administration. The larger themes of our of U.S. interests abroad generally stay the same. The how and maybe where to emphasize, what emphasis is placed on the different priorities may change. But our job is to represent the policies, regardless of what our personal opinions might be. We're not, you know, when I go to represent policy, I'm not Micaela. I'm the United States, and so. It is important that you, when you join the Foreign Service, that you understand that that is your first priority, is to do your best 100% job of advancing U.S. interests and U.S. policies. Other questions? Yeah, Rachel, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering because you mentioned that it was so writing intensive, um,
Mhm.
if people with like learning disabilities or do they get accommodations for that?
Yeah, we do have an office of accommodation that we encourage applicants to reach out to. The accommodations can also be made for the tests. But there just needs to be an advanced conversation about that so that accommodations can be made. But yes, absolutely. Yeah, Elliot, you had another question. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I'm a French major at Western. Like, does having previous language skills or like a language major, does that impact like where you get deployed or like what countries you'd be in or whatnot, or is that not so much a factor?
It's a good question. The answer is not really. So if you remember, I mentioned that your first two assignments in the Foreign Service are directed. So certainly when the assignments officers are looking at where you should go, they're going to look at what skills are you coming with. So, you know, maybe they have a critical need in a country where French is spoken. You know, maybe they have a critical need in Yaoundé, Cameroon, right? And they don't have time to get somebody trained up on French, in which case they're going to say, great, Elliot, you're going to Yaoundé. It may be that that they have plenty of French speakers, and what they really need to do is to cultivate Mandarin speakers or Russian speakers, in which case they're going to say, okay, that's great that you have French, Elliot, hang on to that, but right now we want you to add, and we're going to send you to Beijing, and you're going to learn Mandarin in advance of that. So when we look at our workforce overall, we're looking at what do we need in total. So when I started studying Arabic in my career, at the time we knew that we had a shortage of Arabic speakers. I actually started Arabic language training the week before September 11th in 2001. We knew we had a shortage of Arabic speakers, and we were trying to increase the number of people that were learning Arabic. So I was part of a pilot program where I just signed up for the Arabic program. I didn't know where I was going to get sent, so it was a little bit of a gamble. But you know, we look at the whole. What do we need overall? I came in with French too. I've not actually had an assignment where I used my French. But that was because I kind of went in this different direction of Arabic. And certainly if I had sought assignments after you get tenure, so after those first 2 directed assignments, you have a lot more input into how your career goes. So at that point, you can try and pursue assignments that are going to make use of the skills, your French skills, or your interests in particular parts of the world. So you have more control at that point. Hannah, there's a question for you in the chat. How are you enjoying your internship position? What are your takeaways? And why might other students want to apply for something like this as well? And do you have visions for future positions you might apply for? It's a multi-part question for you, Hannah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I really enjoy the internship. Something that I really like about it is that it was already like a virtual internship program. It wasn't like an internship program that needed to be adapted with COVID, which I think a lot of internship programs sort of struggled with. I also like that there's a lot of flexibility to get projects done. It doesn't have, like, for the most part, it doesn't have to be done like on a set schedule. Like I can work on something like at 11 p.m. or 11 a.m. It doesn't really matter. I've also really enjoyed working with the other interns as well when we collaborate. They're super nice. Yeah, I've definitely learned a lot. Some of my takeaways from the program, that's a really good question. I've learned a lot about the State Department and how it works and different jobs that exist within the State Department. Yeah, that's probably my biggest takeaway. I work a lot of I've helped out with a bunch of info sessions, and one of my projects has been like data entry for jobs. So I know a good amount about jobs and career tracks in the State Department. I think a good reason why other students might want to apply for something like this, if you're not interested in like a career in the State Department or even diplomacy, this program has like such a wide variety of projects. Like I have a friend who's also in the virtual federal student program, and she's working for the Forest Service on like archival research, and that's what she is interested in doing for her career. So she's been able to like practice something for her career, and she's also really interested in like the Forest Service. So she's been able to like learn a lot through that. She also did a program the year before with the Smithsonian, and that was really good experience for her. So I think something like really valuable is that there's a huge array of projects, and you probably will find at least one that you're interested in. If not more than one. When I first was looking at them, I was like, there's like 7 that I'm really interested in. How do I narrow it down to just 3? Right now, I don't have any visions for future positions that I might apply for, just because I'm planning on applying to law school at the current moment. But I think that like this has definitely opened my eyes to what types of careers there are within the Department of State and what you can do with different kinds of degrees within the Department of State. And so I think that like even knowing that has really influenced me a little bit. Yeah.
One thing I'll just add to what Hannah said on that last point, and that's a great point, Hannah, is also the State Department, the careers are always out there. And you don't have to feel like you have to rush into applying to any of the positions. The internships you do, because you have to still be a student to apply for the internship. So once you're no longer a student, the internships become a different matter. But these careers are out there, and I will tell you that the average age of people that join the Foreign Service is about 34. So we get people at all different stages of their careers. Some straight out of undergrad, some having completed one career already and they want to try another career, so they're joining in their 50s. And then we get everybody in between. And with the fellowships too, we have applicants both straight out of undergrad as well as who have, a number of years of professional experience under their belts and want to go back to school and are interested in the Foreign Service and want to do grad school as a way to pivot back in. So it's always out there. Yeah, and Hannah, I can definitely send you more about the Virtual Student Federal Service program. It's a great one. And I think Hannah made a really good point. It was already designed for a virtual environment, so it was an easy fit this year. We had a lot more people apply, as you might imagine, for the virtual internships, but we also had a record number of projects posted as offices realized this is the way to go this year. And I think we'll probably see a repeat of that this summer. I put my office hour link and my email in the chat, so please keep those on hand and feel free to reach out at any time. But other questions folks have? Well, if there's no other questions, I will just say thank you so much for inviting me to participate. I'm a huge fan of study abroad programs and initiatives. I found my study abroad experience transformational. And so I ran a lot of exchange programs in my career in the Foreign Service of study abroad activities, but really appreciate the invitation. Hannah Nevitt, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, and for everyone coming today. And like I said, we were recording this session, so we'll have it available, and we'll be sure to have students reach out if they're interested. So thanks everyone for coming.